Does Evolution Disprove God? Part 2. In Part 1, we discussed the first three origin questions, which are 1. Where did our time, space, matter, energy universe come from? 2. Where did a finely tuned environment that can potentially support life come from? And 3. Where did the first life come from? In this video, we'll discuss the last major origin question. Where did the diversity of life on Earth come from? This question has been conclusively answered by overwhelming evidence for evolution, right? I mean, even today we observe new species spontaneously appearing in nature. What more proof do you need? Actually, new species appearing is completely irrelevant. This is because standard genetics tells us that new species not only can appear, but they inevitably will appear due purely to natural reproduction. The major classifications in animal taxonomy are 1. Domain, 2. Kingdom, 3. Phylum, 4. Class, 5. Order, 6. Family, 7. Genus, 8. Species. Let's pretend, just for the sake of argument, that creationism is true. In this scenario, there is no need for all species to have existed in the beginning. There's only the need for animals that existed in the beginning to be able to produce every known species through natural reproduction, as opposed to DNA mutations. Genetics tells us that this aligns most closely with the family classification. Take the cat family, for example. If you start with just one male and one female cat, all the genetic information is present for every cat species on Earth to appear over time, including tigers, leopards, jaguars, lions, panthers, cougars, small cats, and domestic cats. It can happen through simple reproduction. In fact, as stated, it is inevitable that new species will continuously appear over time through natural reproduction within all animal families. Natural selection, common descent or ancestry, gradualism, gene flow, genetic recombination, genetic drift, endosymbiosis, all of these are terms that refer to processes that are known to occur within families. All of them are observable and established by the scientific method, and all of them have nothing to do with debunking creationism. New species spontaneously appearing, and all the mechanisms by which this happens, are compatible with evolution, but they do not prove evolution any more than they prove creation. So why do we sometimes read about new species appearing as evidence of evolution? This is something that creationist scientists complain about. Evolutionists quote-unquote debunking arguments that they haven't made for decades or in some cases over a century, while never addressing their current arguments. For example, Harvard geneticist and creationist Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson wrote a book called Replacing Darwin, which explained the aforementioned reproduction example, among other concepts. After publishing the book, he gave an open invitation for evolutionary biologists to debate him on the content. The invitation was accepted by Dr. Herman Mays of Marshall University. In his opening statement, Dr. Mays brutally attacked Dr. Jeanson as a pseudoscientist and then attempted to debunk what he apparently thought were several claims Dr. Jeanson promoted in his book. Every time, Dr. Jeanson responded by asking Dr. Mays to specify where he found those claims in the book, which Dr. Mays couldn't do because the book didn't contain any of them. Dr. Jeanson later stated that Dr. Mays displayed almost no evidence of having read the book at all, despite having claimed to read it twice. In subsequent interviews, Dr. Jeanson pointed out that it is illegal in the United States for public schools to teach intelligent design-related concepts, which is why most scientists have never considered natural reproduction rather than DNA mutations to explain our planet's biological diversity. For creation to fully explain biological diversity on Earth, all you would need is at least one male and one female member of each animal family to be present at the beginning of the diversification process. You wouldn't even need much time for this to occur. Have you ever heard that old trick where you ask someone whether they would choose $1,000 right now, or 1 penny today, 2 pennies tomorrow, 4 pennies the next day, and so on for 30 days? The trick is that if you chose the pennies, after 30 days you would have over 1 billion pennies, or over $10 million. After 40 days, you would have over 1 trillion pennies, or over $100 billion, and so on. That's the power of exponential growth. The same is true of animal reproduction. Of course, animal numbers are limited by what the available habitats can sustain, but the potential for genetic diversification in even just a couple dozen generations is nevertheless staggering. Incontrovertible evidence for evolution in accordance with the scientific method would require observing either the emergence of a new animal family by natural causes or one animal family converting into another, which has never been observed. And whatever paleontologists assert the fossil record establishes, the hard evidence for such an occurrence resides in the DNA sequences. In fact, over 99% of an animal's biology is found in the soft tissue. Fossils do not and cannot constitute observable, incontrovertible evidence of evolution in accordance with the scientific method. Furthermore, even if we set this aside and look for evidence of such occurrences based only on hard skeletal structures, the fossil record still runs into a gargantuan problem known as the Cambrian explosion, or the biological Big Bang. The reason it's called the biological Big Bang is because virtually all major animal phyla, which is 3 taxonomy classifications above family, appear in the fossil record suddenly and fully formed, not gradually or in stages. How is this possible? Interestingly, in 2018, a team of nearly 36 scientists published a paper in Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology, positing that the biological Big Bang occurred as the result of, you guessed it, alien seeding. The study focused largely on cephalopods due to their genetic material supposedly being able to survive travel through space, but the larger takeaway was that life on Earth appeared to defy unaided terrestrial evolution in their assessment. The paper's abstract stated, "In our view, the totality of the multifactorial data and critical analyses assembled by Fred Hoyle, Chandra Wickramasinghe, and their many colleagues since the 1960s leads to a very plausible conclusion. Living organisms, such as fertilized ova and seeds, have been continuously delivered to Earth, which has resulted in considerable genetic diversity and which has led to the emergence of mankind." The natural emergence of a new animal family, or one animal family converting into another, could only happen through DNA mutations. It cannot happen through natural selection, common descent, or any other family-contained mechanisms. This likely explains the wording chosen by the scientific descent from Darwinism statement, which over 1,000 PhDs in scientific fields have publicly endorsed. The statement reads, "We are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged." The signatories include about 180 biologists, 250 chemists, 120 doctors of medicine. It also includes about 450 university professors, approximately 100 of whom are professors of biology, chemistry, or medicine. Nevertheless, the National Academy of Sciences put out a statement falsely claiming there is no debate within the scientific community over whether evolution occurred. Scientists continue to debate only the particular mechanisms that result in evolution, not the overall accuracy of evolution as the explanation of life's history. Ironically, National Academy of Sciences member and Penn State chemistry professor Philip Skell is one of the Dissent from Darwinism signatories. The Dissent from Darwinism website asserts the list exists in response to efforts by some to, quote, deny the existence of scientific critics of neo-Darwinism and to discourage open discussion of the scientific evidence for and against neo-Darwinism. The website also adds that signing on to the statement does not imply endorsement of any alternative theory, such as intelligent design or creationism. As one example, the New York Times interviewed atheist and Brooklyn College biology professor Stanley Salth, who said he signed because evolutionary biologists were unfairly suppressing any competing ideas and deserved to be prodded. A number of criticisms of the Dissent from Darwinism list have been voiced. Let's take a look at several. One is not well supported, a few are valid but need qualification, and one is irrelevant to the core issue, which is that no mechanisms of evolution have been observed to cause the appearance or conversion of any animal family, much less higher taxonomy classifications. The New York Times ran a derisive article in 2006 asserting that, quote, many of the signers were evangelicals. While this could theoretically be true, the article offered no percentage estimate, and the claim was based on interviews of just 20 of the signatories, of whom, quote, some or, quote, several were evangelicals. The 20 interviewees accounted for less than 5% of the signers at the time. The article also argued that only a quarter of the signers were biologists whose field is most directly concerned with evolution. This is a valid point, although it could be added that any science-based PhD and probably most non-PhDs can easily grasp the core issue. The National Center of Science Education called the wording of the statement, quote, spin and, quote, misleading because it only mentioned natural selection and mutations and didn't name any other mechanisms associated with common ancestry. However, this criticism is irrelevant to the core issue. In his 2015 book, Basics in Evolution, evolutionary biologist Michael Milan pointed out that the descent from Darwinism statement was created by the Discovery Institute, which promotes intelligent design and creationist ideas. This point is worth raising. However, as stated, signing on to the statement does not imply endorsement of any alternative theory, including intelligent design or creationism. Milan also pointed out that the sum total of the signers accounted for well under 1% of the total number of PhDs in the world that are qualified to sign it if they choose. This point is also worth raising, although it includes no information about what percentage of those qualified individuals is 1. Aware of the list's existence, and 2. Aware of the core issue it raises. Nevertheless, to Milan's point, it's fair to say that only a small minority of biologists and other scientists express skepticism of evolution's ability to fully explain animal diversity. This raises an important question. Is it theoretically possible for a large majority of experts in a given field to be wrong? The answer to this question is obviously yes, and there's many examples we could point to. It can happen with governments and intelligence experts taking many nations to war based on information that turns out to be completely false. It can happen with economics and financial experts who somehow fail en masse to detect massive structural problems that plunge the world into a global recession. And it can happen with scientists as well. While scientists enjoy the highest public trust of any group of professionals, the trust is arguably not well deserved. For example, in 2005, Stanford professor of medicine John Ioannidis showed that most published research findings are false because they are framed to satisfy confirmation bias. Scientific retractions are nothing new, but in 2012, a major study of over 2,000 retracted scientific articles found that the vast majority were retracted not because of error, but because of misconduct, plagiarism, and fraud. In 2013, another major study of over 1,500 scientists uncovered a, quote, crisis of reproducibility in which the majority of published and supposedly verifiable findings by scientists could not be replicated. The fact is that scientists, like all other field experts, are human beings that are subject to confirmation bias, worldview bias, normalcy bias, groupthink, peer pressure, career advancement pressures, self-preservation, and at times just good old-fashioned dishonesty and corruption. This certainly includes the field of evolutionary biology, as was powerfully illustrated by what was once considered possibly the most important discovery in human history. In 1912, the New York Times heralded that some of the world's foremost evolutionary biologists had finally found definitive proof of the long-sought missing link between apes and mankind. The human skull with an ape-like jaw was dubbed Piltdown Man and was estimated to have lived 750,000 to 950,000 years ago. The incredible fossil was introduced as proof of evolution during the infamous 1925 Scopes monkey trial. United States public school children were taught that Piltdown Man conclusively proved Darwin's theory for more than 40 years, and over 500 scientific papers were written on it. There was just one problem. Piltdown Man was an abject fraud. The teeth were filed down to make them look human. The jaw was boiled and stained to make it look older. Jaw and skull fragments were planted at the site. The ultimate science conspiracy theory was, in reality, just a conspiracy, and all the world's foremost scientists were none the wiser. Let's return for a moment to the topic of public education. Many evangelical Christians have asserted that intelligent design or creationist concepts should be taught alongside evolution in biology classrooms. In response, a number of reputable scientific organizations have vehemently protested the notion. For example, the American Anthropological Association has stated, "Science describes and explains the natural world. It does not prove or disprove beliefs about the supernatural." The American Astronomical Society has stated, "Science is not based on faith, nor does it preclude faith. The teaching of important scientific concepts should not be altered or constrained in response to demands external to the scientific disciplines." The National Association of Biology Teachers has stated, "Explanations or ways of knowing that invoke non-naturalistic or supernatural events or beings are outside of the realm of science and are not part of a valid science curriculum." The Geological Society of America has stated, "Science, in contrast, is based on observations of the natural world. All beliefs that entail supernatural creation fall within the domain of religion rather than science. For this reason, they must be excluded from science courses in our public schools." The Paleontological Society has stated, "Creationism is religion rather than science, because it invokes supernatural explanations that cannot be tested." In my opinion, these are fair and valid statements. As a Christian, I'd say the sciences are the study of what God has created, but the actual act of God creating something out of nothing defies science by definition, as we discussed in the last video. This creation act is the subject of theological study, not scientific study. However, I also believe science should play by its own rules. There is no evolutionary biologist on Earth who has argued or would argue that mankind has observed a present living animal family spontaneously appear due to natural causes or convert into another animal family. While some paleontologists claim the fossil record shows this, despite lacking hard DNA evidence, in reality, the fossil record shows not only families but virtually all phyla appearing suddenly and fully formed in seeming defiance of evolutionary explanations. Thus, science has not conclusively answered the question of how animal families originated, much less the higher classifications. This is a glaring gap in the scientific body of knowledge, and science textbooks should acknowledge it. They also should not claim without evidence that all life evolved from single-celled organisms. And, going back to the last video, they should not claim without evidence that single-celled organisms spontaneously arose from a primordial soup via chemical evolution. If science textbook authors want to acknowledge the glaringly obvious appearance of design in one-celled organisms, fine. If they want to add that some scientists speculate without evidence that the cells could have been brought to Earth by beings from another planet, fine. But then they should also point out that some scientists speculate without evidence that the origin of the cells could be attributable to the same cause as the Big Bang. The latter speculation is at least as reasonable as the former. The Paleontological Society is correct that science cannot test or study supernatural causes. However, this also logically means that science does not have the ability to rule out supernatural causes until a natural cause has been conclusively identified. Science has not identified a natural cause for the existence of our time-space-matter-energy universe. It has not identified a natural cause for the existence of a finely tuned environment that could potentially support life. It has not identified where the first life came from, and it has not identified where animal families and higher taxonomy classifications came from. Therefore, it has not ruled out a supernatural cause for any of these things. Furthermore, science will never rule out supernatural causes. Even if we met the aliens that seeded the first cells and traveled to the parallel universes that explained the life-enabling properties of Earth, we still wouldn't have proven the first clue about where those aliens and universes came from. If there is no God, why is there something instead of nothing? Even an 8-year-old can understand that logic. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out my free book available at the link provided. Thanks for watching.